Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Moreau, and I am the CEO of American Eagle Gold. I am also the director for the YMP Toronto and also the co-founder of the YMP Scholarship Fund. Why the YMP Scholarship Fund is close to my heart, because mining is close to my heart. I believe mining gives you two of the three pillars that you need in life. It allows you to see the world and allows you to help the world. And right now, in order to make our industry a better place to work in, and we really need the best and brightest people to not only enter mining, but also stay in mining. So by providing funds to people like Morgan, Caitlin, and Romy, who I'll introduce you to in a second, we really are making the industry a better place. And these are the next leaders of our industry. So first I want to introduce Morgan Weller. Morgan's at UBC. She's in her final year. She won the $10,000 Barrick Scholarship. And I want to welcome Morgan, who is also a geological engineer.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I also want to welcome Caitlin Fischer. Caitlin's a two-time winner. She won the IAMGOLD Woman in Mining Scholarship in 2019, and she also won the TD Securities Woman in Mining Scholarship in 2020. She's at Queen's University taking her master's, and she's a geological engineer. Finally, but not least, we have Romy Done. Romy's actually in Suriname. She was the first winner of the YMP Scholarship Fund. She won the IAMGOLD 2018 award. And she's from U of T. She's a mining engineer, and she has been working at IAMGOLD at Roosevelt Gold Mine for 2 years. So I just want to welcome you, ladies. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, it's a pleasure.
So let's just jump into it. Morgan, what got you into mining?
I think that probably one of the big problems, well, I don't know if I want to call it a problem, but a lot of people only get into mining if they have like a friend or a family member that was in the mining industry. And that's kind of where I got lucky. I had a friend of a friend that was in the mining industry, and I've always been really interested. It sounds super weird, but I've always been really interested in rocks. So that kind of allowed me to move into that industry. I didn't know much about geological engineering, and I was pretty excited to find the information on the UBC website and that they offered it at UBC close to my home. So that's where I've gotten into it. I'm in the mining industry through rock mechanics and slope stability and geological engineering. So that's how I got into it anyways.
Romy, how about you? I always tell people your story of how you got into mining when I'm trying to convince the government of Canada why they should educate every single school that mining does exist. I think it's the greatest secret in the world. You get to travel the world. You get to really work with really great people. And let's face it, you're solving problems all the time, which keeps you thinking. But Romy, tell us why you got into mining.
I got into mining. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but in high school, there was a science and technology trip, and I went on it. We went to Saskatchewan, visited a bunch of facilities. There was a rock processing lab where they took core samples, and I was so interested in it. I started to learn more about it, fell in love. And then most importantly, there was an exploration geologist there who told me that if I go into mining or to this field, somebody's going to pick me up in a helicopter, drop me off in like the jungle or the forest, and let me roam around for a few days and come back with information. And I was like, sign me up. That sounds like the best deal ever. And lo and behold, a few years later, I've been dropped into the middle of the Amazon jungle, and I'm out here mining in a mining camp.
Interesting. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Romy. And Caitlin, finally, what about you? What got you into mining?
Yeah, so I kind of went into geological engineering after my second year at Queen's. And so the first year at Queen's in engineering is just kind of a general year, and you get to dip your toes into the different disciplines that are available. And it was through a course in the geological engineering department that was offered to first years that I first learned about geological engineering. And I really enjoyed the kind of hazard assessment side of geological engineering that we were introduced to. And since then, I've kind of moved from geological engineering into rock mechanics, similarly to Morgan. And I've been working in the mining field that way. So I've done rock mechanics works for some different mines.
Well, we're in the middle of a pandemic, as everyone knows, and I'm just wondering, how has COVID affected you? And Morgan, first for you, how has COVID affected you, and how are the job prospects out there?
So COVID's affected the biggest part of my life is school right now, just because I'm still in my final year. The end of third year, we got moved online and it was pretty hectic, but the professors at UBC have done a really good job of moving all of our classes online. And it takes some time discipline, but we've been able to work through it. And coming into the job world at the end of the year here, it's definitely interesting doing all of your interviews on Zoom or WebEx or on phones, even just phone calls. You kind of miss that little bit of personable situations where you get to meet everybody, but I think all the companies have done a really good job with making sure they're still doing open houses or information sessions to make sure they're getting as many people interested in them as they can, and they've been doing a really good job with that. So I think it's exciting. It's going to be good.
Now, Romy, you a little bit different than Morgan. You are working and have been for a couple of years. How has COVID affected your work life? You're doing a rotation at Roosevelt Gold Mine.
So they've had to limit their capacity at camp. So that means there's a lot less people in the office. We live in a mask. The only time I'm not wearing it is for this interview and when I sleep. They've turned some of the dorms into quarantine dorms. Right outside next to me, there's a quarantine dorm. They put a little like fence around it. It looks like jail. It's scary. Wear your mask so you don't go to jail. Other than that, I spent half my life in quarantine, but the mine marches on, gold price is high. You got to do what you got to do as safe as you can. And so far we've been doing a pretty good job.
Great. Now, I worked at Roosevelt Gold Mine, and I just want to say for anyone out there, working at site is very important. It helps you really learn mining operations, something you can't learn anywhere else. But one of the things that really attracted me was a mine campsite. It's almost like going to camp as a kid. You have your barracks, you have your food, you have the mess hall. There's a little store where you can buy things, and in reality, you're hanging out with your friends. People live there. People in mining are amazing. The only real difference is you're not playing sports during the day. You're going in and do your job. And again, mining is great because people do love their jobs. Very seldomly do people leave mining. Now, can you maybe give us a little bit of a taste of camp and how it's been for you so far, and any good anecdotal stories you might want to share?
Yeah, camp's pretty good. It's actually a really big camp. We have about 2,000 people on site at all times. Not all of them in the camps, but we do house more than half. So it's big. The kitchens are big. We have a great outdoor facility, which I think is fun. I told the girls and Tony this story the other day, but I was outside sitting underneath one of the dorms, and then we have these massive beetles that like to go and sit on the roofs, but then they have this habit of dying on the roofs and then sliding off. And if you're the unlucky person sitting right under that roof, you get thwacked in the head of the beetle. And I mean, they're like the size of footballs. So I got hit with a football, but it's a rhinoceros beetle. And so I think I got a concussion from it, but it's all part of the fun of living at camp.
That reminds me of a story when I first went to Roosevelt. They actually give you a pamphlet, and it attracts you to there. It's like going to a resort, and they tell you about there's a great little loop where you can run outside, and there's an exercise area, and you get really excited to go for a run. I like running, but on the very next page, they tell you about the animals of Suriname, and they talk about the jaguars, and they could be anywhere. And then they talk about this little arrowhead frog, and they say if you touch this frog, you can die. It's so poisonous. And I never went for a run there, too afraid I'd be stepping on that frog. So you're right about those crazy animals in Suriname. Now, Caitlin, I looked at your resume, and you won 2 scholarships. And I look over all the scholarships. Your resume is outstanding. You're amazing. You've obviously won 2 scholarships that got chosen by 2 different companies. Now, what made you decide to actually stay in school as opposed to picking from any company to work for?
Well, thank you. First of all, that was very flattering. I would say that I kind of just happened into my master's kind of naturally. When I was finishing up my 4th year, I'd been working on an interesting independent study project with Dr. Mark Diedrichs, who's become my supervisor for the master's. And so that was kind of testing the waters and seeing if I would be interested in doing kind of a self-driven research project. So that was a neat experience in my 4th year. And we also had a capstone design project where we were doing some open pit slope design work with BGC engineering. And I think working on these different projects in my 4th year and throughout my undergrad really I really enjoyed the experience at Queen's, and I really enjoyed doing research and my studies. And the opportunity just kind of came up to start working on my master's. And there's a really interesting topic that I'm looking to get into with numerical modeling of rock bursting. And my supervisor is very interested in having me work on that. And so I think it just kind of happened that Dr. Mark Diedrichs was willing to take me on, and there was a really interesting project available, and I just kind of leapt onto the opportunity. I also think it's easier to do grad school while you're still in the mindset of a student versus going away and working and making a lot of money and then having to come back to the student life. So I think it was a logical next step for me.
Well, you're only padding to that A+ resume anyway, so I don't think you'll have a problem finding a job when and if you want to. Now talking about jobs, ladies, what's the first thing that you look for in a company when you're applying? Morgan, if you're looking for a company, what are the traits that you're looking for?
I think that one of the more important things to me is that I actually enjoy going to work every day, aside from the projects that I'm working on. I really want to be able to like the people that I work with. So a strong company culture is important to me. I've always enjoyed like the teams or the intramural sports that a lot of engineering firms have. So that's really fun to look forward to. But I always think that it's also really important that your supervisor or your team or your boss or whoever you're working under is also invested and interested in your career and putting you in places and positions, allowing you to grow and really learn various things in your discipline. So that's probably one of the big things. And of course, everybody thinks about money, but that's always just a perk of the mining industry. So put that in my back pocket for now, but definitely culture and a supportive team are really important to me.
And how about you, Romy? You've been IAMGOLD for a while. What are your thoughts in terms of looking for a company? And in the end, why did you choose IAMGOLD?
I am a sucker for location. So it's all about the fly in, fly out lifestyle for me. IAMGOLD offered that to me, and so I said, sign me up. And so I worked at a few different mines so far, before IAMGOLD, and it's all about different locations. I was in like the Arctic, I was in like, the desert in America, I've been down here. And so I like jumping from site to site just because you get to see all the different issues, because every site comes with its own challenges, and everybody at that site thinks, oh, you've never seen this before, this site's the craziest place ever, like, it's just so wild. And as you circle through, you're like, I've kind of seen these problems before, and then you do end up coming to some sites and you're like, oh my god, I have never seen this problem before. So it's pretty interesting to just keep that up. I love the locations because I had a beetle fall in my head here, or you're up in the high Arctic and you see like haul truck sliding down ice ramps into the pit. You think, how is he going to get out of that one? So it's always something different. Yeah.
Obviously, the culture is good at Rosabelle, and you get along with everyone.
Yeah. So like you mentioned earlier, site, they're your family, they're your friends. You get up with them, you eat with them, you work with them, you go to bed, and it's always the same people. So you spend more time with them than you do with your actual family, back home. So you create your own home here, and it's a really good, strong culture between expats and locals and just everybody on site.
I heard you have quite the commute to get there. Maybe you could tell the audience about that, where you live and how long it takes you to get to site.
So right now I live in supposedly Victoria, BC. Nobody would know that because I spend most of my time either in transit, in quarantine, or at site. I go from Victoria to Toronto for a few days, take a COVID test, and then go on to Amsterdam. Sometimes take a test in Amsterdam and then come down to Paramaribo to Suriname to South America. So it takes 3 continents for me to get to work and 3 continents back. It's like 2 or 3 days. Quite a commute.
Almost as long as it took people in Nantucket to sail across to Canary Islands and back around the Horn in South America.
Yeah. Feels like it, yeah.
Now, Caitlin, I want to touch on the future of mining. What is the future of mining? What does it look like to you? And what kind of things interest you in terms of the mining industry improving or focusing on?
Yeah, I think that there are definitely a lot of different avenues that people can touch on when we're looking towards the future of mining, because it's definitely a focus at this time to be looking towards having mining be extremely sustainable, especially with moving towards electric vehicles, for example. There's definitely an increasing and ever-present need for mining. And so if that's being done worldwide, which it needs to be for people to live lives like we do, filming on our computers and with our cell phones and our headsets and everything, we definitely need mining. And in order to do that in a way that's sustainable for the planet, there definitely need to be a lot of advances in terms of sustainable mining solutions. And in another way, I also think it's interesting how things are moving towards being increasingly automated as we move forward. And there are a lot of automated mine vehicles. There are different remote ways for people to be accessing equipment that is in underground mines, for example, to actually be extracting ore. So that's a really interesting advancement in terms of not just sustainability, but in terms of safety. I think there's always the ability to increase safety in mining. And I think moving towards more automation and stuff like that is a really great way to move forward and make safety improvements.
How about renewable energy? Is that something that's on kind of the forefront of your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think kind of how to tie that into mining, but if more kind of mining electricity grids could be powered by renewable energy. Obviously, mining is an energy intensive process and processing ore. So that would actually be a good thing to integrate into ore processing if it's a possibility. But yeah, definitely sustainable energy is a great solution, and integrating that into mining solutions in any way possible would be definitely a positive.
Yeah, look, mining gets a bad rap, but I think one of the problems is we don't educate the public enough about all the good stuff that mining does. We really do help out the communities, and without mining, there wouldn't be technology. And one of the funny stories I was in Melbourne for an IMARC conference, and there were all these people, which I'm sure were paid for by some lobbyists. They're outside picketing and throwing stuff at people. And one of the guys said, "Don't worry about it. I'll show you the best thing to put these guys in their place." And he asked them what time it was, and they pulled out an iPhone, and iPhone has silver, gold, aluminum in it. So it just shows you that you do need mining, but you really got to make sure that you are mining as responsible as possible, which miners are doing. The one thing I think that they really have to do is probably market that a little bit better and really let people and educate people how they're actually mining safely.
Yeah, now, transparency for sure.
Exactly. Now, Morgan, what about future of mining for you? What does that mean? Do you want to touch a bit on what Caitlin said?
Yeah, I mean, I can touch on a little bit of what Caitlin said and a little bit of what you said. I think that our moving forward, I mean, right now it's okay for us because we have small graduating classes in mining engineering, and maybe our job aspects are a little bit better. But I think that one of the bigger problems moving forward in mining is going to be it's our perception of mining from the public, and then also just the knowledge of mining regarding the public and the amount of people that are actually entering the mining industry. I think that we should work on making sure that we have the brightest and the best people coming into this industry, because the thing at UBC this year, I think there was one person that had mining as their first choice for engineering. And I mean, our years are getting smaller and smaller, and some of my profs this year, it probably has something to do with COVID, but they've had the smallest classes they've ever had in their careers. So I think one of the bigger problems in future of mining is actually having the people that are going to be there to make these solutions work and to work on the solutions. So I think that's something that I'm pretty passionate about working on, and I try to use every opportunity I get to make sure that people think about their computer and their iPhone and where it comes from, and not to just automatically put this bad rap on mining, because it is definitely something that people overlook, is that it is everywhere. So that's something that I think is important.
Thanks, Morgan. I'm going to put everyone on the spot before we leave, and thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to ask you each 2 questions. So I want you to pretend you're telling a company something, and then telling either a student deciding to get into mining or a new grad going to a company. Now, first of all, I'll ask each of you really quickly and provide me a quick answer. What's one thing that every mining company should do to attract the best and the brightest to the mining industry, particularly to their company? Morgan, you can start.
I think that the most important thing would just be to know that you're going to, like I said earlier, you're going to be supported. It's something that if you want to grow, if you want to work on a certain project and you really want to make a difference in that area of mining, then they're going to be there to support you and they're going to help you work towards that. So I think that if they can convey that in what they do, it's a good way to get people excited about it.
How about you, Romy?
I think it's important to highlight the possibilities of where you could be if you join that company. So, some people, they want to stay in the technical field. So, if I want to stay a technical person, like, where is that going to go? Or if I want to move more into management, what does that look like? So I worked for a company that did split that up and saying you could choose either or, and you can move between the two. It's all up to you. Because sometimes it's a bit of a black box when you're looking at a company saying, okay, I like this position, but what about in 2 years? What about in 5 years? Like, do I stay with them? What am I looking for? And a big thing, I'm speaking mostly from like a production side, because I have not worked for a consultant, which they would be working on like projects that, Caitlin and Morgan have, I think, have more experience with, whereas I've always been like with the company. So I think that's pretty important in my perspective, just to see like, okay, where could I be in a few years and what could I be working on, just for, in what aspect?
How about you, Caitlin?
Yeah, I might go a little bit of a different route, but kind of to both companies and engineerings oh my gosh, not engineerings, and universities and post-secondary education organizations. It would be really interesting if people could work towards marketing mining and the different experiences that you can have in mining and getting that across to young audiences. So starting in high school, really getting people aware, just like the mining industry got Romy into it. It would be wonderful if companies and universities alike would be able to start kind of just making transparent all the opportunities that are available, like for travel, like Romy says. There are so many different technical projects that people could be working on, and just a lot of experience. And there's some good money to be made in the industry for sure, and advancements to be made in terms of being sustainable and in terms of safety for people working in mining. And I think just getting bright minds into mining will just end up improving it all the more. So I would go a little different route and say, for sure, start advertising mining to people when they're younger.
Oh, so I have something to add on to that.
Go ahead,
to what
Romy.
Caitlin said. She made a really good point about advertising all the different routes. I was standing at a university booth for U of T in my last year, and I already knew the path I was going into drill and blast. So I started at Roosevelt and drill and blast, and a high schooler came by. She was there like for her sister, but she was just with there. And then she came over to my booth and started talking to me. She had no idea what mining was. And I ended up talking to her for like half an hour about all the stuff she could blow up. And the next thing you know, because like we do drill and blast, such a huge part of mining, drill blast, low and all that. And then, so I just told her about all the things you can do and like all the explosives you can hold, which sounds a bit ridiculous, but she was ready to go. And sure enough, she actually signed up a few years later. So I was happy to see that. Just advertising those things, because you never know what, floats someone's boat.
Mm-hmm.
I think the people are really important too. If you look at the accessibility you have to the leaders, mining's unlike any other industry. You really can, if you're the most junior person at a company, and you've seen it yourself, Romy, you can go right to the CEO's office and you can talk to them. They're all super personable. They all worked at camp, which I think creates a good culture and a good personality. And everyone in mining pretty much started from the bottom, and they worked their way up, and they all have great personality. So I think that is extremely important. Now, one final question, I touched on it earlier. Put on your sales caps, ladies. And if you have to convince someone to go to mining versus technology, give us your quickest pitch on there. And Romy, I'll come back to you to start.
So you want me to start?
Yeah. What would you say to someone to get them into mining? Why should you join mining?
Well, I did tell that girl all the stuff that she could blow up. Why would they get into mining? I guess, the travel, the salaries aren't bad usually. And you just get to deal with problems that you would never think of, but also they're not problems like, that are like this big. They're problems like the size of your house, because literally all the equipment's supersized, everything's much bigger. You're projects are huge, dams, bridges, everything's huge. And so you get to do everything on the macro. So if you want to do micro stuff, maybe you would go into nanotechnology or something, but if you want to like solve some big stuff with lots of money behind it, go into mining, because you get to do it in cool, strange places in the world that you've probably never heard of, like Suriname.
Okay. And Morgan, really quickly, you won $10,000. What'd you do with your money?
Oh, well, against my partner's best wishes, he's not thrilled with the amount of plants I have, but I did put most of it went into my student loans. I have a good chunk to pay off, but I did buy myself a bird of paradise. So if anybody knows what those are, they're not cheap plants, but it was my little happy moment. And now I look at it, and every time I look at it, it's a nice reminder of the scholarship. So that's what I did with my money, but it's definitely helped me pay off my student loans. It was very helpful with that.
Now, Caitlin, you've won 2 scholarships. You're still in school. Really quick question. Are you going to apply for a third year?
Yes. Yeah. For sure. You'll be seeing me rolling in applications for whatever you have available next year. Just to toot YMP's horn a little bit, like just wonderful, wonderful opportunities for students in mining, students in geological engineering applying to these awards, and I know that they had a lottery process this year as well. So through the lottery process and through the different scholarships, like you can definitely get some aid for making your way through school. That's really, really valuable for decreasing financial stress. So absolutely, I myself will be applying again.
Okay, well, listen, ladies, thank you very much for participating in this interview. And again, I just want to reintroduce everyone just so you remember their names, and you will remember them later on because they will be the next leaders of the industry in 10 or 15 years. We have Morgan Weller, we have Caitlin Fischer, and we have Romy Done. If you want to learn more about the scholarships, go to YMPscholarships.com. Our plan is to support the industry and make sure that we have the best and brightest people that stay within it to help it further continue to grow. And for everyone out there, don't keep it a secret. Remember to tell everyone mining rocks.